Hello, hello. I'm Dr. Cassandra, and today I'm doing a chart reading for Selena in time for her, what would have been her 52nd birthday. And I will be joined by my sister Christina because we have like a deep love and appreciation for Selena. Two, because she's my sister and Selena rolled with her family all the time. And three, because I love gossiping with her, and astrology to me is like celestial gossip. It's amazing. All right, so here's Christina. Hi, Christina. Hello.
Hello.
Oh, you look so beautiful.
Thank you. You too.
I love your como la flor homage
Thank
vestido and
you.
the hoops because we love us.
Yes.
And today we're going to be talking about Latina American, Mexican American icon, Selena, or as she and her family pronounce it, Selena. And yeah, there's a lot to say. This gets pretty juicy. Her chart is very like it's zesty tea, and it's a very pictorial representation of her life, of her energy, and even some of the main characters. It's like a stage. Her chart is like a stage. So I'm going to all right, pull that up. And hang on. Oh wait, I'm doing the wrong thing. So I also want to say if whoever's watching doesn't want to roll with Spanglish, or roll with like people that they don't know crying about people that they don't know, maybe stop right here. All right. So where are we? Oh no, this is all right. This is Selena's chart. Sorry, I have to get used to saying Selena because I did not grow up saying Selena or, spend these last 22 years saying Selena. Or not 22 years, how long has it been? 1995. And okay, so it's almost the 30th.
Almost 30 years.
Yeah, so I've spent the last 30 years saying Selena.
Yeah.
Because we were more of the like what's like the triangulated international, but then American audience of Miami, and the Latinidad of Miami that was a fan of hers, but was a fan like via her Latin American celebrity as opposed to the more local connections. So yeah, we grew up saying Selena. But they said Selena, and so did all of her local fans. And it was through Spanish television that we got to know her as Selena. So I'm going to try to say Selena to honor her. It's her birthday, what would have been her 52nd birthday, is tomorrow. That's why I was stuck on 22nd. So 52nd birthday is tomorrow. And I originally recorded this on Easter. And then now later looking at, some of the symbolism here, I think that that's really interesting because I started doing this chart because my astrology teacher was saying that there is a correlation between people with Pluto in the 8th house and famous death. Right. And so I thought to myself, I wonder if Selena has Pluto in the 8th, and mira logi. So, and
Ahí está.
Ahí está. And interestingly, in Virgo, which was the sun sign of Yolanda Saldivar, her murderer.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Dun, dun, dun.
Right. Entonces, let's get started. Let's get like to the heart of the chart here. But yeah, that's what sent me down on this trail. And so as we know, like her death magnified her life, and she went from being a star to an icon, a constellation. So entonces we start here at the first house, Aquarius, right? And like initially you're not going to get an Aquarius vibe from Selena, but her North Node is there too. So this is a new energy for her, but she really embodies it because, you know, she's not gringa, but she's like a third generation American or more on her mom's side. And then, like she's singing in Spanish, but she doesn't speak Spanish. She doesn't grow up speaking Spanish. It's this very male dominated genre where the band leaders are machos, you know, and, she's super young, you know, she reaches, you know, international stardom at like 18, but they've been hustling desde que era una niña, right? Living on a bus, you know, just everything weird, everything out of the box, like nothing unexpected, not fitting in the status quo. So a real, you know, maverick. She represented also the underrepresented because really, the borders of the United States and Mexico are arbitrary and they've also changed over time. So hers is also a story of indigeneity, you know, on both sides of that border with her parents and her family and, you know, her whole community, and then like who that represents, and then extrapolate this onto like all of the, you know, all of Latinidad. And it really helped to fill in some of those gaps where a lot of us who have like bicultural parents or like we're gringos living in a Latino community, you know, or like we're around Spanish, but it didn't really click until we came into our own, right? And so she represents a lot of those people. And what does Aquarius do? They represent the mass, like the masses. And she definitely does that. And it's almost like serendipitously in this very, you know, first house North Node in Aquarius, you know, she's just doing her, which is also a very Aries thing, which we'll see. So, all right, let's then move down to this second house. So that we were in the first house, here's the second house, Pisces, right? So loving, beautiful, transcendent energy. And she has Venus there, and Venus is exalted in Pisces because of these qualities, right? And also this, like, it's very spiritual, it's very flowing, it's very open. It can also be very innocent or very naive. And again, this is a very young person who died even before age 24. It was right before age 24. So that's the second Jupiter return. She's been, you know, hustling, working, making money.
Living her dream.
Also money. What's that?
Living her dream.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Venus and Pisces, living the dream and making a living, building security, second house, through, you know, her dream. Yes. And so, then, all right, interestingly, and we'll come back to the 11th house later, but if the ruler of the second house is in the 11th house, that's an indicator of wealth. So the traditional ruler of Pisces is Jupiter, and it's there in the 11th house. And the modern ruler of Pisces is Neptune conjunct Jupiter in the 11th house, right? So that's an indicator for massive wealth. But it's also her público, right? Sus fans. That's the 11th house, and you see her moon there too, right? So it's a point of like nourishment and emotional fulfillment and safety. So, but it wasn't really safe, and we'll see more of that later too. And Neptune, you know, just real quick on that, Neptune can, you know, present illusions and deception, but we'll get to that, you know, juicy 11th house later. But por ahora, this Neptune is represented here in the second house of resources and stability. And one more thing, she's a night chart, so that means this Venus is her main benefic, right? So in a night chart, Venus is going to be your major benefic, or, you know, is going to be the most helpful. And then Jupiter is the great benefic, but it's, here she's the queen. Venus is the queen of this chart. So, and we also see like this kite, everybody's pointing to La Reinita, the dreamer here in the second house. So third house. Third house is communication, short distances, like close connections. So it's also siblings. It's also community. But yeah, it's communication. And here we see her, her sun. Her sun is in Aries. Like this is, what lights her up is being, in this close-knit community, in doing this creative sun endeavor with her siblings, third house, and she's the leader, Aries, right? And so, yeah, this is what lights her up. This is important. She also has an older brother who can be a bit paternalistic, but he also was like her creative collaborator. They co-wrote together. He produced the music. And he was like almost 8 years younger than, or almost 8 years older than her. So I feel like he's represented also in this house, but also Suzette, her big sister, she was like right in the middle. So it was like 4 years and then 4 years. So the difference between these two was almost 8. And Suzette was right in the middle and lit her up too. And, but yeah, I also want to point out that Chiron is here, and Chiron is a wound that when we then, if we try to integrate the lessons of healing this wound, it really helps us to heal others. But Chiron is a place where we feel like awkward or unprepared or unwelcome, or just like we don't fit in there. And so Selena got pulled. The band was like a Jackson 5 situation where their dad was like, you're going to play the drums, you're going to play the bass, you're going to sing and dance. And like, booking, they were playing at they had a family restaurant. At first they started there playing for the restaurant. And there was economic issues. It was the 80s. So that kind of went under, but she started singing the band when she was 10 years old. I believe it was 10 or 9. And what's interesting about Chiron is if you look at the degree, that's usually the age of the wound, right? So a few years later, her teachers are complaining that she's like playing at restaurants and bars, on Thursday and Friday nights, and then missing Mondays. And she's getting good grades, but they're demonstrating concern. And her dad pulls her out of school. And I imagine Suzette too. And then she does a correspondence course, which is the like online learning of the 80s and 90s and 70s. You just would do your home, when you would read and you would do your homework, you would write it out and you would put it in the mail, and then you would get your grade. So that's how Selena finished school from like age 13 on. So, but as she gets older, I imagine like this getting pulled out of school at an early age might have created a sense of like not feeling prepared for business meetings and that kind of thing. So like that awkwardness of Chiron, I imagine was, from dedicating her life to, also living her father's dream because he was a musician.
Right. It's also, I feel like Chiron and Aries is a wound to the self, because Aries is like the I am. And so she didn't really have a sense of self as a child because she was told she was the lead singer of this band, and it was her father's dream.
True. Good point. Yeah. And, people usually with the sun below the horizons, you see more celebrity charts with the sun above the horizon because night-born people tend to be more introverted. But she didn't really have a choice. And especially, starting at that age, like, 10, 11, 12, 13 is when your brain changes in order to grow with your peers, and do peer relevant things. And she didn't have any peers. Like even her siblings were were a few years older than her. So.
And they were her coworkers.
Right. and like her brother, maybe a little bit her boss. so yeah. So what's really cute is that this sun in Aries here is conjunct this Mercury in Taurus in the 4th house. So 3rd house, close relations and communication. And then the 4th house is family and heritage, right? But they're very tightly conjunct, like within 6 degrees of each other. And it's a good balance. So, Aries sun, very fiery, very like ambitious, like get up and go. Like the sun is also exalted in Aries because it's got a lot of drive, but it doesn't always finish a project, right? Whereas Mercury and Taurus, that's how your mind works, that's how you communicate. And it's more like it chooses its words more carefully, and it is more committed. Taurus is more committed. And so, like, for me, this is the pictorial example of how she did not grow up speaking Spanish. She identified with her community, which was, kids born here, including her siblings. But then this Mercury, what she's communicating is here in Taurus, along with Saturn, which is also tradition, and I think really represents her father. And then in this home of cultural heritage. So she used the get up and go of Aries to determine that she was not going to like quedarse atrás en las entrevistas. She was not going to like go through these interviews and be like, and she was going to do it. And then Taurus puts one foot in front of the other and just like does it, gets it, just like moves until it's done,
Yeah.
And then her Spanish was outstanding, like so good, so sharp, and she really, she just worked and did it. And yeah. So yeah, we've got Saturn here, the taskmaster again. Like, this is what you're going to do. You're going to play this. You're not going to talk to boys, and you're not going to, we're going to hire this one, fire this one. This is our contract. This is our life. This is the deal. Get on the bus, Also, we're living on a bus. Like, he raised them kids on a bus. Anyway, pero you got to, I think he was a Pisces. So yeah, a dreamer. Entonces, yeah. So, and again, this moon it's in the 28th degree of Sagittarius, and it's like nourishing the sun, like nourishing this identity, but then also because of the proximity, it's out of sign, but it's also trining this, and like nourishing this this Mercury in this endeavor, which I think was like so well done, so brave, and so well done. But yeah, so you see then this Saturn, which especially in traditional astrology was like the main bad guy, right? So like Saturn and Mars are the malefics, so they can imply bad, bad things. Pluto is technically neutral, but he's like the lord of the underworld, and this intense energy, so I've heard it described as compost, which I feel is a really great analogy because it just like tears everything down that existed before and then turns it into something else. It's very like transformational, like Phoenix energy, right? But stuff's going to burn down in the meantime. That is not probably a very pleasurable experience for that bird, but then it is
And what's
renewed. Pluto. So like the fertile soil for, death and rebirth.
And what's interesting comparing it to compost is from the outside looking in, it doesn't look like there's a lot of activity going on until you're in it and it's hot and it's intense and it's breaking down. Right.
Yeah. And stinky. Like it gets stinky.
Right.
But then like once it goes through that process, then it's just so rich and like life sustaining. It's life giving. We actually had a compost process and everybody was like, you got to quit this. I'm like, no, we're gonna do. My Pluto's in the 12th house. I'm like, I know what's happening under there. So anyway, and it's my chart, one of my chart rulers. So yeah, I believed in this compost, and then beautiful things happened, and there was all these worms, and then this turtle, like this, like what I'm not endangered, pero but Huligao
Yeah,
turtle was like
protected.
yes, protected, living the life, living his best little protected turtle life near my compost. So good things happen. Anyway, so that's Pluto, but like not a malefic. But here, okay, so just real quick about these aspects. Selena has all of these like amazing aspects, right? But we know that her story is a tragedy. But like, so there's this grand trine here, but who is the grand trine between Saturn, Pluto, and Mars in the 12th house of hidden enemy, right? And then there's this kite, right? Oh my God, like smooth sailing, but supported by structure. But then you look at this kite, and you see at the pinnacle of this is this like open, dreamy Venus, right? Wealthy, etc. But who's gunning for her, right? To me, this looks like a conspiracy instead of a blessing. This looks like a conspiracy, and it's Pluto in the 8th house opposite this child. And then, and supporting characters are this, taskmaster here in the house of home and family. And then this Mars in the house of hidden enemies. And then these two are also, facilitating each other. And it's, it's pretty interesting. So, but yeah, I guess that's, I kind of jumped ahead, but let me back it up. I did this Gemini thing right in time for 5th house Gemini. And her lot of fortune is there, and that's money. It's also like, health and wellness, but she didn't really live that long. So here it's like where money comes in and out. And 5th house is the house of creativity. It's the house of joy, house of romance, right? And she's singing arts about love. It's all these 5th house things. And it's also in this sign of Gemini, which is the gender anarchist of the zodiac. And she's breaking a lot of gender barriers too. Gemini is also very childlike. And so she's like the lead girl singer of this group. And it's
a group that also has a girl drummer. Which
true. Yeah. Suzette, yes. Big props for Suzette. Yes. Yeah. So, and Suzette, by the way, was a Cancer, I believe. And that's where I think a lot of this energy is too, because I don't really know a lot about her mom, but I feel like her sister was definitely more of a maternal figure for her. And was also like part of this whole adventure, so yeah. And that could be them there too. Yeah, definitely some gender bending in the 80s with a female drummer. So Cancer in the 6th house. 6th house is your daily routines. It's, how you sleep and eat and nutrition and, wellness. It's the wellness house. But it's also how you work, because that's also part, now we know about work-life balance. I feel like this is an era of understanding a lot more of how the 6th house ties together, because we know that routine is wellness. But Selena had it in Cancer, right? And so then we see that Cancer, this moon is in the 11th house. That's so the moon is the ruler of this 6th house. And according to Selena, she didn't really do exercise, like except for dancing. She's an exceptional dancer. And she didn't do any formal dance training, but she just, would practice in front of the TV. She liked to watch Soul Train. Like that's how she learned how to dance. And then, over the years, like her cumbia, but she wasn't, formally trained. She didn't do exercise. She ate fast food. Like she and Chris Perez fell in love at a Pizza Hut, and like in an acceptance speech of the Tejana Music Award, she's like, "What a burger for everybody!"
Oh.
And also growing up on the road in a bus, and also, so like the 11th house is the house of the people, and that's like a very proletariat diet. I'm sure she also like ate a lot of road food, a lot of like taquerias, a lot of, home food too, and especially, in Latin America. But yeah, a lot of home food, a lot of like cultural food, a lot of yeah, like the people's food. And so yeah, comfort food is here, this, sixth house Saturn. Um, and so we're going to the seventh house, Chris Perez. This love story is so cute in this chart, like in overall, but all right. So Chris Perez was a musician in his own right, a guitarist. He was already respected in the Tejana music scene, but he wasn't really feeling fulfilled with his work. He has this like rock and roll vibe. He wanted to do something edgier. He wanted to, do something creative and interesting. And so they ended up losing their guitarist, and then they needed a new guy. AB, her brother, hires Chris Perez, and he's with somebody. Her dad is like, no, she cannot date anybody. It's also cultural. Like, we know, like, if you know, you know. So this like amor prohibido from the beginning.
My favorite song of hers.
Yes, such a good song.
Yes.
And so yeah. And aside from Leo being in her descendant, it's also her south node. So like she knows what it's like to be a rock star, right? She knows that what that Leo life is like, because she came in with that. Her new mission is to be like of the people, right? But who sees her? This person sees her, and she can just be everybody else. He was already a musician, right? So he's not looking at her like la diosa or, un artista. He can just see her as this like, kid who's growing up and doing this hustle that he is too. And also he was like, yeah, just so like the hair, how leonine, the hair, the muscles, like super rockero with the jeans and the chain on the wallet, and like, anyway, and his sun sign was Leo.
Oh.
Yes. So it just like it's perfect. And he was young too. I think he was only 2 years older than her. And also who played her. So like this one-on-one house, this house of like partnership, but also like one-on-one interactions, it's a mirror, right? And so she sees herself in him and he sees himself in her. But also who played her in the movie was Jennifer Lopez, who is also a Leo. And that movie launched her career. So yeah. All right. So is there anything else that we want to say about Chris Perez before we move on? I don't know. All right. I'm not ready to move on, but I guess we will. So pobrecito too, right? Like
I can't even imagine.
I can't imagine. So all right. So now we come to this like tragic Pluto in the eighth. So again, this is the transformational lord of the underworld. Like, we don't always like it. It's not comfortable, but it means something. It's powerful. So yeah, her life is cut short and her death amplifies like her star across the world, like over the course of decades, representing, right? It's in Virgo. So we look to see where the ruler of this house is. And it's here. It's amplifying tradition. It's amplifying her voice, Mercury, in the fourth house of tradition and of culture. And it's like projecting that all over the world. and representing something that meant something to so many people, but through tragedy. And yeah, and because of this, she really has become an icon, that's important to so many people. So yeah, and as I mentioned before, Virgo was the sun sign of her murderer. So and yeah, and it's just like directly opposite that that Venus in Pisces, that like, you know, dreamy, benevolent figure. So
Well, it's also interesting that it's opposite the second house, which is what her murderer was preying on her for at first, was her wealth. She was laundering money through her fan club or whatever that was. And yeah.
yeah, exactly. $60,000. $60,000. So yeah, and she was also like Pluto and the eighth house can also be obsessive, right? Because you know, in order to break something down, you just got to dig at it and dig at it and dig at it and dig at it. I've got a lot of eighth house placements. That's why I love astrology, because you can just like dig in all of that and like, oh, it's amazing. So anyway, but her Yolanda Saldivar, her murderer, was like obsessed with her. And she was, oh, and she was a nurse also, Virgo. So she was a nurse and she was just like, she felt represented. She felt seen, you know, like so many people did. But she was at a place where she like obsessively called her family, got them to put her in charge of an official fan club. And she I mean, she did do a lot for them. She explained marketing to them and merch and like really saw the possibility for this thing. But then, you know, probably needed more support and emotional support. I think she even volunteered to do it at first. She was just like super into it, but then got really obsessive about it. And then maybe because she wasn't being paid, started paying herself. And then that turned into a weird thing.
Yeah.
And then it all, you know, it got pretty messed up. So, all right. Unless we have anything else to say about this Pluto. This Pluto and Virgo in the eighth house, I am going to move on to Uranus, which is like sudden change of events, like, you know, changing the status quo. There's like an edge to Uranus, and they definitely had like an edge to their music and to their band, which as like at the time, so when Selena dies, I'm 16 or 17. And I'm in high school. I'm like punk goth, you know, like I was not connected with that. But retrospectively, you look back and they've got like their leather jackets and like
Yeah,
they
they
were
were.
edgy.
Yeah, it's the Latino rockero thing. It's a cultural phenomenon.
It's a vibe. It's a
Yeah.
whole vibe that like now I get and I'm here for. And I didn't really realize I was a part of, but I was.
Yeah.
I just, you know, and yeah, it's so cute. So yeah, Uranus in the ninth house. So they're like, ninth house is expansion, exportation, right? So and it's ruled by, you know, here in Libra, we're ruled by this little Venus figure here. So in this house of resources, and we're bringing change where it's like, it's radical. And also her changes were so whirlwind and radical. Yeah. So, all right, now let's look at this MC and this 10th house of career and the MC of it's the midheaven. It's how everybody sees you. It is the legacy. And so we've got this in Scorpio, which is a sign associated with death. So we do remember that, but it's also a sexy sign. And like, you know, she's definitely like a sex symbol. And so, but like, again, like very, so all right, here's this interesting thing. So, this Scorpio is ruled by two, traditionally Mars here in the 12th house of hidden enemies. And new rulership is this Pluto in the 8th house of death. So phase 2, this career and this Pluto, or like this legacy and this Pluto, are making a cooperative angle with each other. And then both of them are making an in conjunction to this sun. This is called a yod. It's called the finger of God. And it's typically something where these two cooperative planets help resolve an issue for this planet, where you have like an aha moment. And then it doesn't really seem so inconjunct after all. There's a solution there between these three. But for Selena, again, all of these angles, which typically, when you have more time to develop them, can mean all these things. She didn't have that time. And so really, like this, the place of legacy and the place of career, and then this like Lord of the Underworld are, you know, gunning for, you know, this light that is extinguished, is how I see that. So they're both pointing right there toward that sun. So yeah. All right. I need some water because the 11th house is so juicy. No, it's the 11th house of the public. Esos son sus fans. You know, everybody loves her. Her moon's there. She feels comfortable there. Like the road is her mother. The public is her mother, basically, you know. And her parents like certainly put her there. This sun, this moon is making this beautiful trine to the sun, and then also out of sign to Mercury. So this is like a cooperative energy between her internal self and her identity, her emotions. And so there's this fluidity there. There's not a conflict. The luminaries are nourishing each other and they're lighting each other up, you know, and they're both in fire. So this is like a, you know, a really bright energy. And then, you know, and she's shining here in this, you know, in this house of the public of representation. And then, so Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter's here too. And so she's having a lot of luck in the public. And then with Neptune, like her dreams are coming true here. And she is also being idealized, canonized, right? And, you know, even before and then especially after her death, like canonized here in the public. But from this public, you know, Neptune can sometimes obscure the vision. And then it was, you know, from this public that we get this fan who eventually becomes her murderer. So let's see. Oh, and now the 12th house is the house of endings. It is the house, as I mentioned before, of hidden enemies. It's in the sign of Capricorn. And it is making a cooperative, like trine aspect, like almost like a lucky aspect to this Saturn. So Mars is typically violence. It can be violence, it can be bloodshed. And then again, in this grand trine, like with the malefics and Pluto. And then, you know, supported by this, or, you know, like coming to a culmination with this like Venusian figure. So that's the sad part of Mars in the 12th house in Capricorn. And there's a square here. There's like a hard, you know, tension aspect between this Mars and this sun. And then the ruler of this is this Saturn. So it's trining, it's like the ruler. There's a very cooperative thing there. So like Saturn can represent different things, but especially in traditional astrology, like Saturn was death. Yeah. not, not the underworld, not the hereafter, like it's time for you to go into the dirt, so the other thing about Mars in Capricorn is that, so Mars is exalted there. Why? Because Capricorn is high achieving, and and Mars is, action oriented. So if you can, start that action and then continue to achieve, that's there. Mars Capricorn people can be very competitive. And my experience is, especially if there's not some other, aspect that's, keeping that down, Mars and Capricorn people are like, they have hard bodies. They have developed Capricorn musculature, Mars. And so again, like, she didn't do exercise. she didn't intentionally do exercise. She danced her butt off like for many years. Yeah, great dancer. And that's the other thing, like precision, like precise movements, and just like really a lot of like muscular control. And so 12th house, so it's not like she was like ripped or buff or anything. So it's that 12th house. She was like, definitely, you can see like her musculature control, or her muscular control, blah, 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 which I don't have in the muscles of my mouth right now. But so the precision, the control, and then also hard, like for eating Whataburger and Pizza Hut, and like, yes, she was young, but not everybody when they're young is like that hard. So that's the upside of that Mars there. Was just like a very like fit, or like, and our musculature that is achievement oriented, right? And so you can see it. And all right, so any idea how we're doing on time?
I think we've maybe been at it 40 minutes. I'm not sure.
Okay. Do you want to keep going?
Sure.
Okay. So this is the chart from the time of death. Pobrecita, que en paz descanse. It was so she was shot at around, I think, 11:30 in the morning. She had gone to see Yolanda Saldivar to get some documents from some of this, they caught her stealing money, or somebody in the fan club reported that they weren't getting like their merch or whatever. And they found that it was about $60,000 worth of money that was missing. And it turned into a whole thing, like a back and forth. And they were trying to get some documents from her. There was a lot. I'm not going to go into the whole thing because it's a lot, but basically, Selena takes Yolanda Saldivar back to her hotel room, and they exchange some words. And I think Yolanda Saldivar picks up the gun. Selena goes to leave the room, and Yolanda shoots her in the back. And right there, she severed, forget. Oh, I should remember this. I want to say the subclavian artery. Pero yeah. And so she's able to leave the room. I think it was just one shot too. And so she leaves, she goes into the parking lot, and like somebody runs to help her. And she says, Yolanda in room 1, whatever, And so like her dying words were the name of her killer and where she could be. So Aries is like, they're a business. And no, but I see that. So she was taken to the hospital, and she didn't regain consciousness after said who it was. And she never regained consciousness, and then died at like 1:05 in the afternoon. So this is the chart for the time of death. It was a Cancer rising, and then at that moment, the ascendant of this chart was opposite Uranus, like sudden turn of events, and Neptune, which in this case is deception. But then also like that sort of spiritual transcendence, like spirit is leaving the body. Also her, how she was kind of canonized afterwards. So that's the light that this shed on it. So she's like deified and canonized because of a sudden and wild turn of events that were harsh and were brought on by deception. And there's also, can you see all of these like grand trines? There's it's just like a lot of crazy energy in this chart. So we've got Mars here in the second house of money. So Mars, violence, second house of money. And it is making a grand trine with the moon. Is it the sun too? Yep, moon and sun. And then also this Jupiter. So it's like, and then Jupiter, you see like who not conjunct, but near this like shady Pluto character. It's like he's right there. And he's also forming a trine with this ascendant, and then also the moon and the midheaven. So like what will this moment be remembered for? Like all this. And then her sun and moon is right there too in Aries. It was just a few days, it was 2 weeks before her birthday, her 24th birthday. And she shot almost at high noon. And so like all of those things are brought to light, like up here at the top of this Aries chart, or at the top of this like chart with Aries in the MC in the 10th house. We've got Chiron here in this like house of communication and community. Like we've got this wound in and it's in Virgo in this third house, and it is opposing its own ruler, Mercury, and then again Saturn, which is this, a house of hard lesson, or a planet of hard lessons, a planet of death. And so, yeah, and then this Chiron, this wound in the community is like, is opposite that Saturn and that Mercury.
I want to point out really quickly.
Yeah.
So not only are you doing this the day before her birthday, but Saturn is once again in Pisces right now, as it was when she died.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Good point. Yeah, and then that Venus is here too. And we'll see how this lines up with her own birth chart. But again, it's making oh wait, is it? No, never mind. So I'm trying to see what Venus is doing. Oh, Venus is in conjunct a lot of fortune in this chart. So a lot of fortune is something kind of beyond your control. It's like this destined point between the sun, moon, and the rising. And in this chart, it's right there in that second house, and it is in conjunct. So they can't see each other like Venus. Yeah. It's some people call it the great eliminator angle. Yeah. So, all right, the North Node at this point is also square that lot of fortune, and is trining that Venus. So it's just the North Node is another point of like just where serendipitous things happen, and it can be like life altering, and it's not always comfortable, but that's gonna it's like the fuel for destiny, or it's just like what the soul wants to learn. So then we've got this chart, which is the transit of the time of death on her natal chart. And I couldn't figure out how to make it look the way I wanted to in the other one, but here we go. So this one's a little harder for me to see. All right. So, here's her. I'm going to get to these guys last, but it's just calling my attention. All right. So yeah, this Venus in Pisces, we're in the same sign, as, you know, it's kind of like a Pisces return, but it hasn't happened yet. But what is in Pisces, right now, conjunct that, you know, that Venusian, that wealthy Venusian dreamy figure we were talking about here, is Mercury. And Mercury is communication. And so this was something that was, they interrupted our regularly scheduled programs to talk to us about, you know, first Selena being shot, and then like Selena's death. And it was, I mean, it was huge news. And we were talking about this before, like I was away at the time, and Abuela called me to tell me. And it was kind of like those, where were you when Selena was killed? And it's something a lot of people remember. Yeah. And I think that's even how a lot of people became fans of hers. Because like I said, I wasn't following this music when I was, you know, a teenager. But it was kind of just like, again, it was this like amplification of, you know, of this tragedy, but then also of this person's life. So I feel like this is that, you know, Mercury on top of that Venusian figure, which, like I said before, I feel like that represents her, making all this money for everybody in the second house. So we also have Saturn right there too, which, as we, you know, said before, Saturn's, you know, Saturn's in Pisces right now too. And Saturn was in Pisces then, and Saturn was also conjunct this, you know, this figure. That Mercury, as we were mentioning before when we saw the death chart, that is opposing that Chiron. And here that Chiron is in her 8th house, so house of death. And so that Chiron really was, it was like a wound. Like, I feel like so many people, like Abuela didn't suffer anything. Abuela no sufría nada, pero Abuela sufrió la muerte de Selena. You know, like people really suffered her death. And it's also making these trine, or like these easy aspects with Saturn, right? And then this easy aspect with Mars in her chart, right? And so yeah, it was this death and this betrayal that, you know, created this wound, and this, you know, and then it was like broadcast all over the world. We see Mars aquí. I know I'm jumping all over the place, pero mira, Mars, which at the time of her death was in Leo, is right here in her 7th house on those one-on-one relationships, contracts, legal issues. So this was a violent, like, legal dispute, which is what happened. And it's also opposing her natal ascendant. So lights out, you know. And somebody she did business with, somebody who was a business partner, somebody who was her most trusted employee, right? Because her dad was the one who hired the musicians, and I guess he hired Yolanda too, but it was more of it was like she was her personal assistant. Anyway, yeah, the sun at the time of death is conjunct natal Chiron. Again, maybe like her naivete in a lot of ways, having been pulled out of school and not really having a lot of access to those, you know, resources, perhaps put her at a disadvantage in a lot of business negotiations, and a lot of dealings. Like, her dad was able to wheel and deal a lot of the music stuff, as was her brother. But then this one, she didn't really see coming, or maybe it put her at a disadvantage, or even maybe like the sense of insecurity surrounding it. I feel like sometimes is the thing that, you know, this is the self-fulfilling prophecy, right? And so she has a sun shining a light on her, that Chiron, sun and moon both shining a light on that. So, and again, the transiting moon is making a square, a tense aspect to that Mars and her natal Mars in the 12th house of hidden enemies. And let's see, we were talking about this guy, we were talking about this guy. So yeah, and the transiting North Node was like in her 10th house cusp of career. Okay, so here our transiting Pluto is sitting right on top of her natal Neptune and her natal Jupiter, who are the rulers of this Venus in Pisces, right? So this, this dark circumstance, this dark destiny is like, stamping that out, but also like using that, like the illusion of Neptune to just get in there and yeah. So I feel like there's like visually this chart or these two charts are so interesting in that they all kind of like implicate each other. And there's some people whose charts just like really come to life, or some people who like really manifest their chart. And I feel like this is definitely one of those. Let me see if I was gonna say anything else. Oh, yeah, these guys. Is this Neptune conjunct Uranus. So again, Neptune's dreams, illusions, potentially deception, but also healing, transcendence is conjunct this wild card Uranus, which is disruptive and unexpected. And these guys are making square aspects here to her Mercury. And so it's just like this transit, there was a sudden turn of events. Yolanda was caught with all this money. They're coming after her directly for this paperwork. She feels backed into a corner. So, what does she need to do? She needs to shut Selena up, so it's like, yeah, she just needs it to stop. So this deception and like wild card, unexpected energy is making this aspect of tension over to this Mercury voice, but then also this identity, like this figure. And it's out of sign here in the house. And it's like, it's almost like she didn't mean to, she didn't mean to
It was
kill
very
her.
impulsive, right?
Exactly. It was very impulsive. And it's like, according to the records, like she didn't mean to kill her. She was just kind of backed in a corner and like lost it.
Panicked.
Yeah, panicked. And like, so Mercury also can represent anxiety, but here it's like her voice. She's like, she wants her to stop. She doesn't want her to tell on her. She doesn't want to get in trouble.
And it doesn't make it okay, of course, but
of course, no.
Yeah.
But it's just like, just explaining this thing here, how we've got this conjunction of the Neptune and Uranus, and this conjunction between Sun and Mercury. And it's like what it's actually going for. Oh, wait, am I wrong? What it's actually going for is here, and it ends up getting here. Like she's trying to just like stop this process, like stop this communication, stop this investigation, and she ends up extinguishing her life, and murders her. Very, very clearly, very plainly, she murders her, and she's still in prison for it 30 years later.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, it's not quite 30 years. She has 30 years minimum before. So that would be coming up in 2 years. It's been 28 years. Yeah.
And that's if she was sentenced right away, right after her death.
including her, she was never released after she was arrested. So it's from her arrest on time served.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So it's again, I feel like certain people have charts that just kind of like light up and explain themselves. And this one certainly does. And I feel like through this tragedy, like as we mentioned before, she really not only became an icon, but also just really became sort of like a martyr figure that represented so many people and inspired so many people. And I think it's interesting that, you know, I ended up doing this accidentally on Easter, because then I'm looking at the iconography of it all, right? And she's Sun in Aries. And, you know, we think about this like this lamb, this, you know, this sacrificial lamb that died, that who then went on to resurrect as like something greater, right? And also this like Venus in Pisces, this like love for all, this boundless, like what's mine is yours, what's yours is mine. Like Venus in Pisces isn't just generous. It's like there's no boundaries. There's like, you know, it's love for everyone. It's, you know, prosperity for everyone. It's, you know, really wanting to, you know, for everyone to feel okay. You know,
A love that transcends material boundaries.
beautifully said. Yes, exactly. And so yeah, just a really special person with a really special chart. And yeah, thank you for doing this with me today.
Thank you for including me. It's an honor.
Is there anything else that you wanted to say about Selena or about the charts, or any questions or anything else?
Um, Not really, just that it's, I don't know, it's a tragic yet beautiful story that is, like you said, kind of perfectly encapsulated in her birth and death chart. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Well, thank you, Selena. Selena. All right. Bueno, thank you. I love you.
Thank
I'll
you.
talk to you soon.
I love you. Te quiero. Bye.
Bye.